Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Amanda Barr, and I'm so excited you have joined us today. You better listen all the way to the end. We've got a very, very special guest. I have Phil Pelucha. He's a growth strategist for emerging markets and high growth organizations, from market share to media coverage and investment. He is known as the #1 for podcast publicity and hosts his current show, Billionaires, Imposter, and has grown and sold 2 podcast networks and used podcasting to scale and exit 2 professional services agencies. And Phil is the go-to guy for understanding business for podcasting and podcasting for business. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Thanks for having me here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, I can't wait to dive in. I mean, I would love to just go back in time to before this all started and tell me, what was life like? How did you even cross into this world that you've been doing so many great things?
It's a good question. So I originally started off in the world of sport. I was a professional football player for me, soccer player for you and many of your listeners. And I was playing from the age of 5. And then at the age of 16, I left the UK and moved over to play in Central Europe for a few years. And as far as I was concerned, this was the next 30 years of my career kind of mapped out for me. And then I got a pretty bad injury in my early 20s and got medically retired. And that was the end of my career. And like most people in that environment, I went into coaching. And I hated it. Like, I loved working with the kids. I loved the academy, but I really hated coaching. I often use the analogy. It was like being a recovering alcoholic trying to manage a bar. I really didn't want to be on the sideline. I wanted to be on the field. So now being in a position where I had to spend all day around the game, but not play it, was like torture for me. So I left that world and went into the corporate world and became a Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors valuation surveyor. So I went and studied with them and then went into real estate and construction and had a very successful career there. But around that time, a friend of mine who's a journalist came to me and said, listen, we've just started this like fan alternative media thing, and because you've lived and breathed the world of sport, especially football, for so long, you'd be like a really good host for my podcast. And I was like, what the hell is a podcast? And he's like, it's kind of like a radio show, but it's pre-recorded and then we put it out. And I was like, I've never done radio before. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's fan alternative content. That's the point. It's like people, he said, like, imagine, we go to the pub after the game, we have a few beers and we record that conversation. That's like the feel of the podcast. And I was like, then why wouldn't people just go to the pub and have a few beers? Like, none of this is making any sense to me. But I got involved in it and absolutely loved it, and very quickly started thinking, why on earth are we paying to do this? Surely this data would be valuable to somebody else. And it kind of all started from there. And within a couple of years, I'd grown and sold 2 of these things. I'd practically turned them into radio shows and had people, we had regular daily slots with regular hosts that would do different types of shows. So we had like fantasy football hour, the pre and post match reaction shows. We had the transfer rumor shows. We had the women in sports shows. We had the business sports show. So everybody kind of had their own piece, and we all just kind of did so under this unique brand. And, many years later, I was, when I left the corporate world and was like, how do I win clients? Like, I've never done this before. Like, this is completely new to me. And I realized that I could use podcasting for it, because podcasting, as you well know, it's like a VIP backstage pass to your industry, right? The person that you want to spend 10, 15 minutes on the phone with talking about your business that won't call you back will give you 45 to 60 minutes on a podcast interview. I mean, this right here is a great example. If you contacted my team and said, I want to have 30, 45 minutes with Phil on the phone, they'd say, sure, here's his invoice, right? You invite me onto a podcast. I love these conversations. I'll do these all day, every day. And you can testify. I don't charge for these things. Like, come on, have the conversation. And it's just, for me, it's just the most authentic form of media. I absolutely love it.
I love that. And give us a time breakdown, because you said you started the podcast, you were in the sport, and then you started a podcast. How many years did it take for that first network to grow the second one? Like, just so people get a time lapse, because I think sometimes we think, oh, this could take years, and sometimes it can be quick. So how long was it for you?
So I think because it's interesting because for business and for sport, I used it for very different reasons. So in sport, there was already a lot of interest in it. So it was really quick. I mean, we're talking a matter of months before we broke the 10,000 subscribers mark. Then we kind of got to 50 probably with inside the first year. And I sold it once we were at about 200,000. So it kind of rapidly picks up. And the more kind of clout you have, the easier it was to get bigger guests. So, we would have like 50,000 regular subscribers, which meant that I could go and get some ex-players and managers who then everybody wanted to listen to. And professional newspaper articles were written about, such and such a manager did this interview with the guys over here. And here's what, and then it just kind of blew up from there.
Yeah.
But with business, my attitude was always, I don't care if anybody's listening. Like my attitude was, I now in my business today, because it's what we did for a number of years, is we teach people how to make 7 and 8 additional figures in revenue from a podcast, even if it's got 0 listeners. Because, big secret for everybody here, the power of podcasting is not in the audience. That's just an amazing byproduct. The power of podcasting is in the network. It's building that high profile, high trust relationship with the host. It's putting those two people together and saying, how can we help each other? How can we cross promote? How can we help each other scale and grow each other's businesses? And anything that comes from the audience is just this amazing byproduct.
I love it. I mean, this is why I started my podcast. I mean, if you were to look and somebody's, I've been asked, how many downloads do you get a month? I'm like, well, that's really not my focus. My focus here is to really share incredible stories and how can I collaborate with people? And I see all across your whole platform, strategic alliances you are all about. So tell me, well, I want to dive into that. I know we have so much to cover, but talk about that strategic alliance piece, because you alluded to it, saying we work with these podcasts and this is how we do it. But take me into that world of your view of strategic alliances and podcasting.
Sure thing. So strategic alliances for me, I like to use the analogy that because I came from that world, right? Business is a team sport. And it doesn't matter how good you are at your bit. If you're not surrounded by people who are equally as good at their part on the pitch, on the field, you're never going to win a trophy, right? Nobody wants to be the man of the match, the MVP of the losing team. That's not what this is about, right? And as an entrepreneur, we've all made this mistake. We try and wear so many different hats and we try and do everything in our business. My attitude is don't. My attitude is embrace the bit that you're best at and then partner with people who are equally as good at their part. So in my world, we call it NCPs, non-competitive partners. Who are the people that already work with your ideal customers, your ideal market, that don't deliver the same service or product that you do? Partner with those people, help each other elevate each other's businesses, cross promote each other's stuff, refer business, refer clients, help each other get speaking gigs. If one of you gets it, invite the other one. And I just so happen to use podcasting and media right now as an incredible vehicle to make those strategic alliances happen. Because I'm a firm believer in your vibe attracts your tribe. And this is about who do I resonate with? Who gets me, I get them, and therefore I'm comfortable that if they're going to refer business to me or I'm going to refer clients to them, then I know they're going to be well taken care of because me and that person, we click, we vibe together. So it's really about creating that map. I physically, and I don't share this very often, I physically have a blackboard in my kitchen, a chalkboard, and I've written out my formation for my team, and I actually have people's names and the substitution bench of different projects. So I know, okay, we all want to speak at this particular event. Who are my key players that I'm going to need to win that game? Well, they're going to be my strikers because they open the doors. But these guys right here, they're my systems people. So they're going to nail that. And then the results that come off the back of it, here's my marketing and infrastructure team that are going to be my solid defense and are going to make sure that we don't concede any sloppy goals or make any losses there. And I plan the whole thing like it's a giant sports game.
I love that. I love that. Now with the strategic partner side of it, I do want to ask this because, even in my early part of my business, I would meet tons of people and I'm like, oh, they could be a partner. Oh, they could be a partner. So I'm sure there's people out there that meet people all the time and they're like, well, I meet people and we say we're going to collaborate. We say we're going to be referral partners, but what's the switch for you that, that person, they're really going to be that strategic alliance for me, not just a referral partner? What's the distinction?
It's the same thing that I see with top performers. It's the ability to take action. My key strategic partners are the ones who come back to me the following day and say, here's the ideas I've had. How can we get this in? And they're almost chasing me for things. They're coming to me saying, I've got my mailing list clean and ready to go. What am I sending out? Or, I've got this guy I want to introduce you to. Can we jump on a call tomorrow to discuss it? What's your availability look like? It's that ability to take action, because for me, I practically have like ADHD in business. Like, as soon as somebody gives me a great idea, like, I'm just buzzing and gonna go do it right now. Like, let's execute it today, right now. And every single one of my key relationships in my business, whether they're making an extra $100,000 a year with us or multiple millions of dollars a year with us, they all had that one thing in common, which is we love it, we're doing it, let's take action right now. So what I would do is set people a task, right? And I don't mean like a homework assignment, but say to somebody, look, this is what I'm thinking and how I think we could work together. Here's something I'm working on right now. Why don't you go away and come back to me with something that you can help add to the table right now, and let me know what I can do for you to help you get to that next stage too. If they don't come back, don't waste your time chasing them. If they come back a week or two later, you think, maybe you might be a B or C grade player for me. But if they're right on it, like middle of the night, hey, sorry, dude, I don't want to, hope this doesn't wake you, but I'm so pumped up. I wanted to share this idea with you, or here's this, or I've just, I have literally have people that say, oh, I bought the domain for this because I thought it would be a really cool name for this. And here's a template of what the site might look like if we were to do an event together. And this is within like 24 hours of us having that conversation. Find the people who just, how do I word this? It's like a tennis match, right? You're serving the ball of energy back and forth to each other. I serve it to them. If they serve it straight back, I'm going to go back even faster, and we're just going to keep building and build something great. If you serve it to them and they get panicked by that ball of energy, do yourself a favor, say thank you, but no thank you to that person.
Yeah. Now, what if you've got somebody and they're new in their business, and let's say they're struggling with that? Well, I don't know if I can bring those kind of services. I don't know if I can do that. I mean, we all started somewhere. And I always say you have to remember that every single person that has succeeded started where they just had a thought, an idea, something that came to them, or something was brought to them, and then they did something. But what would you say to those that are like, yeah, that sounds good, Phil, but you already have like all this going on for you? How could I do that if I'm just starting out?
There's probably two things I'd say, and I actually hear that a lot as an objection, and I always call BS on it straight away, because I started doing this right from the very beginning. So there's two things I'd say. If you're in that growth phase, nothing is better, even concept phase, nothing is better than what I call the beer and pizza stage. And the beer and pizza stage is, let's get some key people in a room together and say, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I want to do. I'm bootstrapping at the moment, so we're each going to be getting a slice of the pizza instead of just, some money. What can we do? Who can bring what to the table? Some people will say, listen, I'm out, I'm too busy at the minute. Other people will say, well, I can do this and I can do this. And before you know it, you've moved 5 or 6 steps further forward just by introducing the people in that room. So there's the first thing I'd say.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to say is that, and this is something I see as probably one of the most underutilized tools of an entrepreneur. And I don't know why it's the most underutilized tool, because for me, it was probably one of the biggest that, no, I'll go so far as to say, outside of podcasting, it was the biggest, right? Trade and barter. Trade and barter. Like, I had my website built, my CRM built, my first marketing campaign, my first event. Like, I didn't even pay for my first hosting for my podcasting because I bartered for it. The amount of times, and I was having this conversation with a friend of mine recently. I'll give him a shout out, actually, a guy called Tom Matson, who runs Strategic Alliance Live, a phenomenal event. Next one's in November. People should definitely come check it out. Tom and I are actually doing some work together because I love his approach to strategic alliances. But we were having this conversation because he said, I've had about 50, 60 calls over the past week or two of people interested in my mastermind. And he said, and a decent percentage of them, not all of them, but it's like $100,000 mastermind, right? So a decent percentage of them are like, I want to do it, but I just don't have the cash flow right now. So I'll have to do some sales and come back to you. And he said, one person offered to trade. One. Like that for both of us was mind blowing. It's like if I can't afford $100,000 for this program, but I know it's going to help me make $500,000, $1 million, I'm giving that guy whatever the hell he wants other than cash, right? It's like, well, I can get you booked on shows. I can do this. I can introduce you to these people. Who have I got in my network that would be useful for you? Give me an email campaign. I'll farm it out on LinkedIn. I'll do some promotional stuff for you. What is it that I can do to help you move forward that would be a fair exchange for your services?
Mm.
And that right there is phenomenal. I mean, I remember speaking to my website guy and I said, what is it I can do to help you? And he said, you know, the most lucrative field that I found to work in is real estate. He said, I love doing real estate websites. Plus, I've got like 50 to 60 templates that are always the basis of everything I do. And he said, and they work really well in real estate because I've already built them and designed them. And I said, I worked in real estate. Like I have loads of contacts in this space. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make a website for you. He said, because it's going to take me a couple of hours at most. This is not a complex site. He said, I'll do your whole website, your SEO, everything, get your e-commerce set up, all of it in return for you introducing me to some clients. And he said, now I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, for every client over the first 5 that I get, I'll give you 10% of the fee as well. So I was like, okay. So I went onto LinkedIn. I set up an automation tool. I made a big list of all the people that I knew, and I messaged them and said, hey, haven't caught up for a while. Would love to meet up, see how things are going. I also want to introduce you to this guy. He's currently building my website. He's absolutely killer, but I know he specializes in that real estate space. So if you need a bit of an upgrade at what you do, I know it's always the last thing on the mind, but I can recommend this guy. I seriously vouch for him. He's really good at what he does. He won $250,000 worth of business off those introductions.
Wow.
And it took me 20 minutes to set up the campaign on LinkedIn.
Right.
It's that simple. So people think they don't have anything to trade. You do. Your services, your skill set, your connections, your introductions, your time. The time is the most valuable commodity you have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What is to stop you saying, well, look, what I'm going to do right now to get my business out there is I'm going on a podcast crawl. Whoop, so I'm going to get myself out there. I'm going to tell people what I'm doing. Would it be helpful if I tell those audience members how awesome you are at what you do and make introductions for you? Oh, it's like free marketing. Thank you, dude. That'd be amazing. Great. I'll do that. Can you help me with this? What is it you can do to help me? This is where I'm trying to get to.
It's so obvious and
Yeah.
it's so right there for all of us. And I think sometimes we are looking for all the right tools and all the right ways to do it. And sometimes it's a lot more simpler than we really even imagine or think. So thank you so much for sharing that. I mean,
you're welcome.
It's like gold. My question to you from that though is, how do you manage your time? How do you choose if you were to be let's do this, let's barter, let's work together, let's strategically align? You got to be making money and you are going to be giving and sharing. How do you structure your day or structure your week that this is highly beneficial for you and also everybody you're working with?
So I'm probably one of the most efficient people you've ever met because I don't like wasted time. There's a Bill Gates quote, and I don't actually like that man very much, but there's a Bill Gates quote, and he says he hires the laziest person to do the most difficult job because they'll find the quickest way of doing it. Now, I'm not lazy, but I definitely subscribe to that school of thought. So my attitude is, how can I make sure that everything I do, I win, win, and win from, and so does everybody else around me? So, for example, if I was to do that trade, let's take the website guy, for example, and I was going to go and be doing some bookings for him and getting him out there and doing that stuff. I didn't send the messages myself. I set up an automation tool to do it. I didn't do the bookings myself. The person who I traded to do the bookings for, I got them involved in it too. Right.
Got it.
And then what I did with the three of us was said, let's jump on a podcast interview together and rave about each other's services. And then we can all repurpose it and share it out as social media content. That's social proof that helps us all win even more clients. And that person who's doing a trade for you and you're doing it for them, table things, because like everyone loves these things, but nobody ever asks for them, right? So table things like, hey, listen, we're all working together. Well, actually, the bookings part was done by this person, and I did this bit, and then you did this bit for me. Why don't we all do each other like a 2 to 4 minute video testimonial about how great we were at what we did and our respective bit and why you should work with that person, and then we can use that for our marketing material.
Yeah.
It's going to take minutes, like mere
Right.
minutes. So everything that I'm doing is aimed at leading to the next thing.
Mm,
Everything. So when you talk about how do you make sure you're spending your time in the right place, you can't have too many of these. Absolutely, you can't. But you don't need too many of these. Like that, I need to get some cash flow, I need to get some clients, and I need to win some business is usually the first thing that most people are focused on. So, what are the obstacles in the way that stop you achieving that? What are the tools and the people that are going to help you to achieve that? Put them in place first, and now you've got some cash flow. Now you can figure out what the next step is. I call it the Hansel and Gretel approach. Follow the breadcrumbs, right? Just don't try and plan the next year in advance. Just what right now, I need some clients and I need some money. What's stopping me from doing that? Well, I don't have a payment processor. I don't have a website that I can drive people to do the sales. And I haven't really structured my course program yet. So they're the three people I need right now.
mm. And then how can you win together?
Precisely.
Love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. Now you're a growth strategist. It sounds like a lot of these things are very implementable. And I know that from your writings, you don't have to spend a lot to do and to grow your business. So are these some of the tactics? And is there any other insights or any other ways that you'd say, hey, this would be awesome? And maybe that's even a reason they should be working with you or coming into your world because you're able to get them moving into growth.
Sure. The joy of this is that, I mean, and the funny thing about podcasting is only 8 to 10% of the industry will ever monetize it, either directly or indirectly. And obviously, I've been doing that for the past 13 years and teaching it to other people for the past 6. So, for me, it's just like, it's like walking, right? One foot in front of the other, and you just seem to get to where you're going. So I'm always happy to talk to people about that. But even if you're not going to work with me, start thinking about podcasting differently. Stop thinking about it as this way of reaching this massive audience. It is all of those things, but as a byproduct. I talk about the 3 Ps. If you're going on a podcast to do an interview with somebody, they're going to become a purchaser, a partner, or introduce you to partners. So they become a promoter. So promoter, partner, or purchaser, right? So as to go into more detail with that, essentially, one's a customer. That's pretty easy to explain. The other one is a strategic alliance. The other one is that they have access to people who could be great partners and strategic alliances for you. If they don't do one of those 3 things, what are you talking to them about? But the great part is, and I would say it this way, don't go into it with blinkers. Like our conversation. I don't know what's going to happen after this podcast.
Right.
Right. We're going to have a conversation after this podcast. And I'm going to say, how do we think we can off air? How do we think we can help each other? And I'm going to know people that can help you. And you're going to know people that can help me. We might make some introductions. We might do something directly. But isn't that the magic of this? So what I'm trying to encourage other people to do is find that tribe for you. Who are your non-competitive partners? Who works with that audience that you work with or want to work with that doesn't do the same service or product? Figure out how you can work together, see who you resonate with, and then just have some fun with it. Business is supposed to be fun.
Right. I know. Now I have to say, some people, when they have podcasts and they do this stuff, they're like, well, I want to be featured on these big platforms like Forbes and, Business Insider. So you've done that.
Yep.
What does it take? How'd you do it? Or did they come to you because you were just really bringing a lot of value and you were connected to a lot of great people? What was that magic dust that said, okay, now I'm across all the big platforms?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah, of course.
It was manipulated the same as everything else is manipulated. I interviewed people who were writing for those platforms who wanted to then write an article about me having met me. So it's exactly the same as I win strategic alliances. So it's the same way I win keynote speaking gigs. How do you win keynote speaking gigs? You speak to the current keynote speakers and the event organizers and see who you resonate with. It's really as simple as that. If you put yourself in a room with interesting people, interesting things are going to happen. If you put yourself in a virtual room full of journalists and editors who write for some of the biggest publications in the world, you're going to start getting some press coverage.
Awesome. Awesome. Now you have your show, Billionaires and Boxers. Tell us a little bit about that. For those that have not had the chance to listen, what's the structure of the show and how does it roll for you? What's it all about?
So Billionaires and Boxers for me is very much about it's an interview-based format show. We often do some roundtables as well, especially for the latest season that's about to come out. There's a plug for that. We also use it as a really good way of grading who's going to be good guests for our television show. So we're on to the third season of our TV show. As a business, we also produce around 250 to 300 hours worth of business content each month for about 15 different satellite television networks globally. And I always like to say, not everybody should have their own podcast show, and even fewer people should have their own TV show. So podcasting is a great way of working out who's going to be a good guest and who can add value. So for me, that podcast is all about like the hustle and grind part of your life. Yes, let's celebrate the success, but let's pick on Tony Robbins for a sec, right? If Tony was coming on the show, I don't want to talk about how successful he is and how he's helping all these people. I want to talk to him about that day that he had no money in his account, there was no food in the fridge, and he was sleeping in his car listening to audiobooks. What did you do the next day, Tony? Because there are more people that can relate to that bit than can relate to being an international superstar and what life looks like today. And it's like everyone knows who he is. They know he's mega
Yeah.
successful. We don't need to talk about that bit in too much detail. We can celebrate it, but I want to know how you got yourself out of that position, because that's where the golden nuggets really lie for the audience who are listening. So the majority of the audience are very similar to my customer base, which they're really great entrepreneurs. They're very good at what they do. They get a lot of referrals. Their clients love them, but they haven't got off that roller coaster yet, right? It's still up and down in terms of revenue. Like they're their industry's best kept secret. If more people knew that they existed, everything would be great. They'd win loads more business. And that's the bit that I do. And when I talk to my guests, it's about exploring, well, what did you do during that stage? How did you go from unknown to unrivaled? And if
Yeah.
we can get those golden nuggets and share them, then it really kind of takes the audience to the next level. And me, like every day is a school day. I'm always learning too. So that's what I love about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna bring that back to you. So where were you? Because you got this opportunity. You were stuck in your coaching career and you're like, I hate it. Now
Yep.
you got this opportunity, but it didn't just go that you had all this success. What were some of, as I like to say, the shifts? What were
Yep.
some of the shifts you had to go through, or that you created, or that happened in that time to be able to get on that trajectory of like, you know what, or did you believe in yourself the whole way through? Like, I know I can do this, I can do it
No.
all the way. Or were there times of doubt? And what were you doing to get through that?
No, there was a lot of times of doubt. In fact, for a long time, even when we were successful, I had massive imposter syndrome. I was worried that everyone else had seen something else in me that didn't exist. I genuinely, I remember, like, even during our first television series, I was so nervous while that thing went out because I thought everyone's about to realize that I don't have a clue what the hell I'm talking about. Like genuinely, this is what goes through my mind. And I always say, like, people say, oh, when you're on stage, you're so natural and that you're really at home. And I'm like, I am, except the 5 minutes either side, because the 5 minutes before I'm thinking everyone's about to think I'm an idiot, and the 5 minutes after I'm thinking I have no idea what people thought of that. Give me the feedback so I know whether I did okay. And I'm still like that to this day, right? So I guess the major shift for me, that I want kind of people to take away from this is that I didn't want to be the guy in 30 years' time propping up the bar saying, I used to be somebody. Right? I didn't want to be the person that was like, I used to be a professional athlete. I'd lost my identity, was probably the best way of putting it. Like I had no idea what I even was anymore. And that for me was really disappointing. But what I realized quite early on was that a lot of the things that I loved about sport, the competitiveness, the winning, the going the extra mile, the fun, the excitement, all of that could be recreated in business. Like that doesn't just have to be on the sports field. So, you know, I was always very aware, even in the corporate world, of who my competitors were. And it was a race. This was a game. This was a competition. And I was going to beat them at every opportunity, right? Because that was what got me excited. But like, even things like ridiculous things like how many sales did they do last month? How many sales did we do? Yes, we beat them by this amount. Great. What are we going to do next month to make sure? Like that for me was how we did it, because they didn't even know I was competing with them half the time. It was just, this is for me. But I knew that the best way to get the most out of me was gamification. You've got to turn this into a game. When I get bogged down and I'm not having fun, I'm not productive. If I'm having fun, it's great. So everything I do whether I'm working with clients, whether it's strategic alliances, or whether it's the people who work in my business, if we don't have fun together, we're not going to work together. So for me, and that might sound like a strange thing to say, and some people will say to you things like, you shouldn't be friends with your employees. No, nonsense. Some of my employees are some of my best friends. I absolutely love each and every one of them to pieces. I have to be very good at separating that dividing line in terms of stop working and go and spend time. Like the only time I've ever shouted, and I genuinely mean shouted, I shouted at one of my employees was because he sent me an email on his wife's birthday. And I sent him an audio note, and I was like, I am not going to be the reason that you get a divorce. So get off your computer. If you send me one more message today, I swear it's the last message you'll send. Go and enjoy your day, spend time with your wife, have a great weekend, and we'll catch up on Monday. And I don't want to hear from you before then, because you have to be that firm sometimes. But that was because the line had started to become muddy because he's a friend. So he's like, I don't want to let down my boss. Yes, but I also don't want to let down my friend. So I'm going to do this. And I think everybody now realizes that you don't do that, right? There's work and then there's home. And that's probably the other thing that I would say in terms of a shift, because one of the major things that kind of led me to where I am today from the other businesses, which were successful, but I nearly killed myself while growing them, was I was a workaholic during those other businesses. Family life would fit around work. And the major difference with this business is family life is in the calendar before work is in the calendar. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my wife and girls is in the calendar. Every Wednesday off for meditation time and reflection time is in the calendar. Every weekend off is in the calendar. Every soccer game I want to watch is in the calendar. Every movie I want to watch is in the calendar. Now work gets booked in around that, not the other way around.
Yeah. Awesome. So many great nuggets. I mean, especially for the entrepreneurs out there, I know that this is the balance I'm building. I say I'm in process, because you can get wrapped up in your work. And then what does that lead to?
Yep.
People talk about the burnout.
Yep.
Well, it's just because you're not structuring that day efficiently or not being efficient. But is there anything else? I mean, I know I always ask, you gave so many great nuggets. I usually ask, what's your shifter wisdom? But that was so much. But if there was anything else you wanted to share, or anything happening in life, or something that was like the aha for you, that's something we didn't talk about today, that we can kind of wrap this show up and say, take this nugget, put it in your business today, and head them on their way.
Yeah, so probably one that's a little bit of left field, which is trust your instinct. Make more decisions with your heart and less with your head, because I've done both. I've made those head-based decisions where it's like, I don't really vibe with this person, but it's money and I need the cash right now, and I it's going to solve that problem of paying bills, so I'm just going to do the deal. Let me tell you, as somebody who's been in this game for a while now, it's always those clients that are the biggest pain in the backside every single time, right? So I like to see it as life is testing you to see whether you've learned this lesson yet. And if you keep saying yes to the wrong things, it's going to keep sending you the wrong people to test you. But the opposite is also true. When you say no to those opportunities, more of those people that you resonate with and you vibe with and you have fun with are going to come into your life. I don't even use the word coincidence anymore, because I don't believe in coincidence. you know it's so funny. I wish I could show you. If you could just listen to my calls, you would see what this is like. In fact, I'll give you a great one. Here is one, and it's a little bit of a secret, actually, but we'll share it with the listeners, right? I had a bizarre conversation about 2 or 3 weeks ago with somebody who said, I went to see a psychic recently. And I was like, okay. He said, he told me that Billionaires in Boxes is going to have its own stock exchange. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's going to have its own stock exchange. I was like, that's weird. Then a couple of days later, because I have an intuitive advisor in my business, and we had a conversation, and she said, I'm seeing like a gold stock ticker on the bottom of a screen with like your logo. And I was like, this is not the first time I've heard this. This is really weird. Right. And then about a week or so later, I had someone who says, you know what my dream's always been? I said, what? He says, I've always wanted to start my own stock exchange. Like, I worked on Wall Street for years, and I'm like, this is so mental. Then just yesterday, I had a conversation with a strategic alliance of mine, another person in the world of investment and finance, who said, I want to introduce you to someone. I said, okay. He said, I don't even know what the two of you can do together, but he started the stock exchange in Botswana in Africa. And like, he's looking for some additional opportunities. He wants to see if there's a way of bringing more of these emerging businesses to Africa. And I was like, well, it's funny you should say, because here's what people keep saying. And he said, that is so spooky, because he said to me, do you know anybody that might be good for me to talk to about starting a stock exchange? And he said, you were the only person I could think of that was mad enough to have that conversation. So I was like, well, that's really spooky. But that right there, there's no way that
Yeah.
that's a coincidence. There's no way that that's a coincidence. That is coming to my life. It's probably not a now thing. It's a later thing. But the fact that these conversations are happening shows
Mm,
that I'm in alignment with what it is I'm supposed to be doing. It's not a coincidence that those 15 satellite television networks I work with are all in the emerging markets, and many of them are in Africa. It's not a coincidence that my wife is South African and I have a real passion about uplifting the emerging markets. None of this is a coincidence. It's all in line. It's all what it's supposed to be.
yeah.
And you're only going to ever attract those types of opportunities if you're okay saying no to something in front of you, and embracing the fear of, I'm saying no to 50 grand right now when I need to pay my bills. Everything in my head is saying that this is a terrible idea. But when I think about doing it, everything in my heart and my gut is saying there's something off here. You
Mm.
have to trust that feeling. And I promise you, you'll be grateful when you do. Life will change for the better forever.
I love that message. I mean, I can think of an instance, right now, like things where you've got to make these scary decisions, which, you just don't know. We always say you've got the destination you're headed, but you can't connect the dots until you've gone through them. And then you
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, that all made sense now. That doesn't quite make
Absolutely.
sense while you're going through it, but
I couldn't
it's a
agree
great
more.
reminder. It's a great reminder. Well, it's been such a pleasure. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours. There's so many things we could cover. Still, I feel like we're barely even scratching the surface, but I'm super excited to share this, obviously, with our network and those that are listening today. Share this with somebody. If this touched your heart, I'm just going to say this now, share this with somebody else, because you never know what they might be going through. Maybe there's something that was shared today that might touch them or touch somebody they know. It's that giving, paying it forward and giving it back and shifting everybody and their businesses forward. Phil, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Because I'm sure a few of them are like, well, they're probably already searching billionaires and boxers now, and they're looking for you and want to know how they can get in touch and follow you. What's the best way?
Oh, thank you. So billionairesinboxers.com is always a good place to come and see us. Also, connect with us on LinkedIn. My surname is extremely unusual. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes below, so come connect there. Twice a month, we do a free workshop where we actually talk about things like winning keynote speaking gigs, how to use podcasting for monetization, and how to use it to find those NCPs. And they are free workshops that last for about an hour. You can come in, do the workshops with us, ask some questions, have some fun. So if you're kind of wanting to get started, that's usually a great place to get going.
Amazing. Amazing. Phil, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for just sharing your world, your heart, all the great things you're doing. I know you've touched me and I've gotten to grow. So thank you for this time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for all those listening today, keep on the move.